Thank you very much. When she was saying master's degree, I heard her say MMA. That's boxing. And so yeah, thank you so much for having me. What an honor, what a pleasure. I'm blessed to be amongst so many beautiful hearts, people with clarity of vision, of thought, united against this extremist front. I have spoken to some of you on the way here, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. Now, before I begin my address, and in between, I have other comments to make, some with regards to Islamophobia, some with regards to the Iranian regime, which is not Iranian at all. But I will try to incorporate that in my address. But on the onset, I want to first convey the warmest greetings and regards of CEO of Trends Research and Advisory, Dr. Muhammad Abdullah Al-Ali, who was supposed to be with us today. And he sends everyone here his warmest regards. They are also working against the Muslim Brotherhood. And in fact, Trends Research and Advisory has authored and published the largest encyclopedia on the Muslim Brotherhood that ever exists. In 16 languages, the project, I believe, is going to be anywhere between 30 and 35 volumes, academic work, which I encourage you all to visit their website and become familiar with the important work that the UAE is producing, so that Europe and America and North America, Australia and Africa can be safe. Distinguished colleagues, honorable members of the European Parliament, fellow speakers, survivors of oppression and defenders of freedom, greetings to you all. We gather today in this sacred hall of democracy, not to divide, but to defend, not to fear the other, but to confront a clear and present danger, not to silence voices, but to amplify the cries of the persecuted. We will not yield to an ideology that masks intolerance as piety. We will not yield to networks that infiltrate our institutions while preaching division. And we will not yield to a movement that exploits our openness to erode our freedoms. Look at the evidence before us. The Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist organization of the Muslim Brotherhood, born nearly a century ago in Egypt in the year 1928, founded by a crooked cleric by the name of Hassan al-Banna. This organization has built a patient strategic empire across Europe and many other continents. Through affiliated organizations, charities, educational bodies, and political lobbies, it advances a vision incompatible with liberal democracy. Gradual Islamization, the rejection of secular governance, and the normalization of supremacist ideas. Now, as I read this sentence, it came to my mind that perhaps I should explain what is going on here. You have a Muslim Imam who is opposed to the expansion of a Muslim organization. Before we continue with my address, there is a huge difference between Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood. What is the difference? Islam is a religion. What does it want? It preaches monotheism, belief in one God, worshipping 5 times a day, performing pilgrimage. You're all familiar with Mecca in Saudi Arabia. We fast Ramadan, the month we are in today. I'm not fasting because I'm traveling, and travelers do not fast. Bottom line is, it is a system of worship to build the connection between the adherent and God. That is the goal of God. When God speaks to humans with a book, with all due respect, be it the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, respect everyone's beliefs. Books are there to guide. They are not there to govern by a sword, which is what we see in the tyrannical regime occupying Iran today. That is the difference. It requires, he agrees with me. He's saying, yeah. And he's telling everyone what they're missing out on. So he's a lovely friend of mine. I've known him for years. Islamophobia. He walked down. That is a good example of Islamophobia. Playing with you. The bottom line is, God wants us to be guided, for those who believe in God. Not to be governed by verses, by laws that are there to ensure our piety and that we live together in coexistence and harmony. The Muslim Brotherhood, on the other hand, is not a religion. It is an organization. An organization with a leader, with its own charters, with its own agenda, with its own symbolism, with its own terminologies, and with its own clerics. And the very fact that they used the two most sacred words in religious vocabulary, Muslim and brotherhood. These are very sacred words in a religious context. They've hijacked those words and they say they are the Muslims. And what did we get from the Muslim Brotherhood? We got ISIS. We got Al-Qaeda. We got 9/11. Osama bin Laden was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. We now have Hamas. And who do they kill the most? Muslims. I had to go and receive the remains of my uncle who was burnt alive by ISIS from a hospital in Baghdad. They kill Muslims who disagree with them first, because we are the nearest to them and opposing them. And therefore, we need to encourage the Muslims who stand to reclaim their faith from the crooks who have hijacked it. Islam is a religion that needs to be separate from politics, and governments need to be governments who serve all citizens and all institutions equally. The same way a library and a park and a museum cannot have a religion, the same way a government should not have a religion. The government should protect the mosque and the nightclub equally. That is exactly. And these two institutions can be opposed to each other. But that is God's job to judge. The job of the government is to protect citizens and to organize our affairs. That is what Khamenei did not understood, and that is why he has 72 virgins in hell. It took you a while to... The Muslim Brotherhood, shall we, funds mosques that become centers of radicalization and terrorism. It influences youth through front groups that weaponize grievances. What do I mean? You see these Muslim association groups in universities who speak as though they were employed by Hamas. That you find in the charter of the Muslim Brotherhood, who decided that what America needs and what Canada needs and what Europe needs is students in their educational institutions, colleges, primary schools, high schools, and universities, shaping the narrative so that future graduates already have 50% of Muslim Brotherhood ideology. It is hilarious to see people from the LGBTQ community who would be butchered alive by Hamas be celebrated by Hamas, because Hamas has nothing to do with God, with religion, with laws, with morality, with anything. Hamas will use whoever stands to support it. And therefore, if you see such groups, they need to be educated that you are not standing for human rights when supporting Hamas. You are in fact being the useful idiot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and boy, do they have many useful idiots. God bless you. Thank you. The Muslim Brotherhood delegitimizes our allies and sows discord under the guise of coexistence. We see it in the funding trails that lead from distant capitals to European capitals. We see it in the reports documenting millions funneled to networks linked to extremism. And we see it in the testimonies of those who have fled its shadow. The Muslims who have fled from Muslim Brotherhood, governed states, influenced, impacted states, those are not Islamophobes. Let's go back to Islamophobia for a second, since it was mentioned in great detail here. I'm a Muslim. I was born in Iran, but I'm an Arab. I was born in Iran. We fled Khomeini. Does that make me an Islamophobe? What does phobia mean? Europe? What does it mean? A phobia is an irrational fear. You know what's irrational? To me, if someone came and said, I'm scared of strawberries, I'm scared of bananas, that to me sounds like a phobia. But if someone is afraid of ISIS, of Hamas, of the IRGC, they are very rational and they are very logical, and I respect that fear. Because there are only two sides when it comes to terrorism. You are either for or you're against. And you're against because you fear the danger of this terrorism. And therefore, it is a heavily politicized term. What is the right term to use? The right term, my dear friends, is anti-Muslim bigotry, because that is real. There are Muslims who get attacked simply because they are Muslims, and I am one of them. I'm one of them. My job is always doubled, because when I come to these institutions, I have to do two things. I have a message, but I also have to prove to you that my turban is not the same as Khamenei's. That is the difference. And sometimes I succeed and sometimes I fail. And even when I failed, those people have realized and they've come back and we become best friends. But the point is, we need to make these very clear what the differences are, because the extremist relies on you not knowing what the difference is, so that Osama bin Laden can speak in my name and we are not the same. So who pays the highest price for all of this? The very communities the Brotherhood claims to represent, and so many others crushed under totalitarian ideologies. Today, we heard amazing voices from minority communities, but we also hear the voices of Coptic Christians driven from their ancient homes, their churches burnt in Egypt. We hear the voices of Yazidis and Druze, survivors of genocide, who now warn us of the same ideologies' reach. And we hear the voices of Assyrian and Chaldean Christians and the Rohingya and the Baha'is and the Ahmadiyya Muslims and the Kashmiri Pandits and the Jews, our cousins, persecuted minorities who know the cost of unchecked Islamism. A very important term. Islamism is distinct from Islam. Islamism is what you use to describe the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC, political Islam, who uses any system, including religion, in order to control the masses. And while the infiltration of foreign agendas and the importation of divisive ideologies, who imports them? Hamas's friends and the Muslim Brotherhood already here in Europe import these ideologies on the streets, and you see the protests and the terrorist flags everywhere. They import them into Europe, and they represent a grave threat. But what is far worse and infinitely more insidious is Europe actively funding its own demise through millions in taxpayer euros channeled to organizations and networks aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology, through grants, national subsidies, and partnerships with affiliated groups. Muslim Brotherhood advises the European Parliament. It advises some elected members, whether on grounds or outside, especially Ramadan, where networking is intensified. The Muslim Brotherhood, this is their season. European institutions, unwittingly or deliberately, subsidize the very structures that undermine secular democracy, promote separatist ideas, and erode the foundational values of individual liberty and pluralism. This self-sabotage transforms openness into complicity, turning the continent's own resources against its future. Yes, I saw you writing. Imams give sermons. Today is, it's not a Friday, but it's a Wednesday. We can make it happen. I'll wrap up shortly.
Thank you.
Let us also turn our gaze to the brave people of Iran, who have endured decades of tyranny under a regime that exports terror and oppression. The Iranians, who are they? Poets, scholars, freedom fighters, are a beacon of resilience and culture, heirs to a civilization that once enlightened the world, yet they have been shackled by a theocratic dictatorship that stifles their spirit and silences their dreams. We praise the Iranians for their unyielding protests against injustice. We praise the Iranians for their courage in the face of repression. We praise the Iranians for embodying the universal yearning for liberty. And we thank the Iranians in the Gulf, in the UAE, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, who are now standing with their host country against the bombs and the shrapnel and the missiles and the cruise missiles of their regime that are now landing on the Gulf states. We thank them for their solidarity with us. Thank you. And now, with the tyrant Khamenei taken out in a decisive strike, a window of hope opens. Many people don't know, where do we put this man, right? Where does he sit? What category does he fit in? He doesn't fit in any category. There is no such thing as supreme Islamic leader appointed by God. You're either the president or the prime minister or a chancellor or a chairman of a party. That's what we have in the United Nations. There is no such thing as elections that elect a president and then he goes and kisses the hand of another individual and says, whatever you say, I follow. That is the scam of scams. And what we need to understand in the West is the same way we had the bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, who claimed to be Sunni. We have the Shi'i version, that is Khamenei. On the same level of threat, the same damage that we have seen. So a window of hope opens. Why? Because his removal marks the end of an era of brutality. A regime that ordered the slaughter of its own people and its neighbors, funded the Houthis and proxy wars, and threatened global peace. This is a victory for justice, a blow against the architects of division who align with ideologies like the Brotherhoods in their quest for dominance. We call for freedom in Iran, free from the chains of tyranny. We call for freedom where voices can rise without fear. And we call for freedom that honors the Iranian people's rightful place amongst the nations. This connection between the regime and the Brotherhood runs deep. The Iranian regime has long funneled vast sums, tens to hundreds of millions annually, to Hamas, the Palestinian offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, providing weapons, training, and financial backing to fuel violence and instability. We don't need to speak about Hamas. We know they're garbage. These are not distant stories. They are warnings etched in blood. They remind us that tolerance without vigilance becomes complicity, and openness without boundaries invites subversion, and freedom without courage invites tyranny. Yet Europe has a choice. You can pretend the threat does not exist, ignore the expert analyses, the insights of counter-extremism voices within Islam, the reports exposing financial networks and ideological infiltration, or we can act. I'm almost done. We must, this is the bottom line. If there's anything I want you to pay attention to, it is this. We must designate the Muslim Brotherhood and its affiliates as a threat to our security and values, and terrorist organizations across Europe, they need to be designated as terrorists for what they are. We must scrutinize, thank you. We must scrutinize funding that flows to fronts promoting division. And we must protect our democratic institutions from those who would replace them with theocratic control. To this Parliament and to Europe, the hour is late, but the resolve is strong. We, us, will not yield. We will not, but we will expose, we will safeguard, and we will prevail. Thank you. May truth and courage guide us forward.
Yes.